So we took the side-by-sides out for a weekend ride and went up in the Greenhorn area and visited some old mines and some of these old buildings that are still left. Then we kind of decided to make a tour over towards Granite, and then took a left and wound up here at the Fremont Powerhouse. I've been up there, I don't know how many times we've been past this place, and it's never been open. And it just so happened this weekend, the caretaker was there, the building was open, so we got to tour it. And I've been past this place for the last, 30 years and never been inside of it. And so this was a real treat for me to be able to look inside this building and figure out what was in there. Quick glance at the transformers. We'll come back to those in a minute. You can kind of see the two generators there and the workbenches they had and the tools. Now they've done an excellent job restoring this facility. It collapsed in 1993 in the winter. It had so much snow on the roof, it collapsed, and it sounded like it was going to be destroyed and just wiped off the map. But fortunately, some people got involved and saved this facility and restored it, and have done an excellent job in restoring it. And the caretakers have done an excellent job keeping it up, and they take you through an excellent tour. If you ever get a chance, stop by. Now this thing really had me scratching my head what it actually was. And what it is a DC motor that started turning the generator and the Pelton wheel before they applied water to it. I always assumed they just hit it with water and it started turning. But no, they used this with some big DC batteries and started it moving and then applied the water to it, which kind of makes sense so you don't destroy something with all that high pressure water. The water hitting that Pelton wheel is about 500 psi in pressure. And that's the generator. That's actually an alternator, but everybody calls it a generator, so we'll go with that. And this contraption is the governing mechanism. And mind you, this facility was built in 1908. It was put in service in 1908. This is the second powerhouse in Eastern Oregon. The first one was the Rock Creek Powerhouse, and this was the second one. And eventually the two lines were tied together. And here you can see one of the control valves to control the amount of water coming into the Pelton wheel. And the pressure gauge. And a duplicate setup on the other side. It had two generating stations. Now, I'm not sure if both generated at the same time or they alternated back and forth. And there's a control panel. That thing's made out of 2-inch thick marble. Marble doesn't conduct electricity, so they hauled this stuff in special. I think he said it was from Italy, and had to boat that stuff over here. And it is thick, heavy, and all carved out by hand, it appears. So that must have been quite a project. And a look at the second generator and the battery rack over there that would have held the batteries to start these things. And if you're wondering what those pipes are coming in down below there, that's inside the pit. I wondered why in the world would they put a water pipe in there, but what that is a vent pipe that goes in where the water comes out of the Pelton wheel. There's kind of a pit there. And there was so much turbulence and everything, they needed to put a vent in there. So it actually sucked air from around the turbine into there to create the vent, and it also acted to cool the turbine down too. And you can see the overhead crane they had in there to do maintenance on this thing. Quite a contraption, especially considering this was built in 1908. Now behind that big control panel is a setup. Looks like a mad scientist lived back there, and he told me the main purpose of it was to synchronize the 60 hertz, and you can tell this was definitely an add-on later to the building. And I think the reason they did it was when they combined the two power lines from the Rock Creek power plant and this one, they needed a way to synchronize the 60 hertz, and somehow they did it with this contraption. It just kind of looks plumb scary back there, the way things are connected, and it's super interesting though. I just can't imagine working back here if this was energized. Now the whole reason this power plant was built, much like the one on Rock Creek, wasn't to provide power for any towns or cities nearby. This was made to provide power to the mines. This one was built for the Red Boy mine and then provided power to other mines as well in the area. Now back then, power was pretty much a novelty, or electricity was. So getting power to the towns and communities was a second thought. Their first thought was powering these mines. And here you can get a better shot at that Pelton wheel and what it looked like inside of it. You can see the paddles that the water hit. It was really hard to try and get a shot inside that thing with the camera, with the glare of the sunlight behind you. There's one of the paddles that's brand new. And here's some that are wore out. You wouldn't think, water would wear those out, but it does. Here's a shot of those transformers that are left. I believe the voltage coming off of the alternators was around 6,000 volts. I think these jumped it up to around 44,000 volts, and I believe this was three-phase power coming off of these. At least the tag on the transformers here shows 6,600 volts and 44,000 volts, so I'm assuming that's what it meant. Wasn't real clear. And here's the holes that the power would have fed out through to the utility poles. The water for this plant was fed from Olive Lake about 8 miles away and was fed through a pipe like this. They were wooden with steel straps around them, and you can still see this pipe quite a ways up the mountainside alongside the road going to Olive Lake. It's really interesting. All the manpower and labor that went into installing that pipe must have been just outrageous. And here's a shot of the dam being built at Olive Lake. And looking down at the power plant from up on top of the hill where the power line fed over the hill, this shot was done, these shots were done in probably about 1908 to 1910, somewhere in there. And here's the building after it collapsed. And I'm sure Joe Batty is in that picture somewhere. You can see it totally destroyed the building for the most part. Now to get this repaired, Joe Batty, I think he was a sergeant major in the National Guard, got the National Guard involved, and the National Guard did a tremendous amount of work on this. He had to pull a lot of strings to get it pulled off, but he got it done. And then it sounded like after he retired, he was actually the caretaker at the place also. And the current caretaker told us a story of how he died at his cabin several miles away from this site up on Clear Creek, and told us some ghost stories about Joe and how Joe, he feels Joe's still living there at the power plant as a ghost. And it was kind of interesting. When I got back, I ran into this photo and was looking at the date that Joe had died, and it kind of dawned on me that I went to an auction up there the summer of 2006. He died the winter of 2006, they figure early January, and actually the current caretaker is the one that found him up there by his cabin. He apparently passed away from a massive heart attack. Anyway, I started putting the timeline together and thinking, you know, I went to an auction up here from an old guy that had passed away, and it would actually happen to be on my wife and I's first anniversary of dating. I took her to an auction of all things, and I wound up buying a TD9 dozer that we used for mining and around the place here. I had it for quite a few years, then sold it. It kind of just struck me that I think I actually wound up with his old TD9 dozer that he had for plowing snow. We had to do some work to it when we got it, but I'll be darned, I'm almost positive that little dozer was one that belonged to him. That guy had so much stuff at that auction. I couldn't believe the amount of stuff this guy had collected. I don't think he ever threw anything away. But that was the only thing I walked away from that auction with, was that little TD9 dozer. Paid $1,000 for it, used it for about 5 years, and then sold it for, I think, $2,500 or $3,000. Anyway, just a little interesting sidebar there. Just happened to figure that out when I was looking at the pictures and kind of pieced it all together. And like I said, I'm almost positive that little dozer belonged to him. Anyway, that powerhouse was built in 1908. The Rock Creek Powerhouse was built in 1904, a little ahead of this one. And the Fremont Powerhouse operated until 1968, when California Pacific Power shut it down and donated it to the Forest Service. And one of the stipulations was they couldn't restart that power plant. Now the Rock Creek Power Plant, somebody's actually trying to restore and put that one back online, which kind of makes sense. It's I'm surprised we don't utilize that kind of power more often, honestly. Seems like kind of a waste, but you know, is what it is. Wasn't expecting to make a video about that. Just happened to go up through there and saw that it was open. Thought I'd take a little video of it and share it with you. Like I said, I've wanted to see that powerhouse for many years, and I'm so glad they restored it, and I was really happy that we got a chance to visit it that day. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, subscribing. And they tell me there's a little bell down there in the corner, and if you click that bell, you'll get a notification when we post a new video. So, have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you on the next video.